as Tiziana said, I'm working for a smaller company that is here in the area of Pisa, which is called Promoter SRL, and we are the coordinator of European Space. I am happy to see that there is a majority of women in the room, so at least once we have larger representation, which happened not in the last days during another conference that we were chairing where the majority were men. So there is a good balance between the two genders. European Space has a subtitle that is Spaces or the Possibility for the Use of Digital Cultural Content. And Tiziana already announced that it is a network, it is a best practice network. It is a special kind of project supported by the European Commission, whose scope is to put together actors on a certain subject, and in this case they are those who implement the pieces of the project. The project in itself is a facilitator of activities that happens in this network. For this reason, the project is huge. It's made of 29 partners from 13 countries, and there are SMEs, cultural institutions, museums, libraries, broadcasters, national cultural agencies, even ministries of culture, and the university, and the technical university. So it is a combination of the different skills, very multidisciplinary, whose final aim is to establish a network that will last longer than the project itself. Next, please. The project has three main tracks. The first is to increase the use and reuse of digital content. The rationale is that a lot of digitization has taken place in the last years. Many museums, libraries and archives have gone through digitization initiatives, creating big repositories, still often organized as silos of information and not interconnected. And this big amount of content is not fully exploited. It was produced for the scope of being produced. But what to do with this content has not been explored enough. So this is the first objective of the project, to explore which are the conditions for this big amount of content to be interconnected and to be reusable. Clearly, this means technical aspects, so infrastructure that makes it possible to interoperate different repositories, and the legal framework, because there is the major problem of openness of data versus respect of the rights of the content owners. And this is a tension that continues to be there, which is positive because enables discussion, but sometimes is also locks the actual possibility of the reuse of the content. This is the first area of investigation. The second is that we think that if we are able to unlock the potential that is in this amount of content, this will create new opportunities for employment, jobs, new businesses, new economic development around the reuse of the digital content. And on this area, we have organized a program of hackathons, business development workshops, and a lot of activities that can support the small enterprises entering into this creative environment to find their way to do business. And as I said, this is another area of work. And the third is that we think that we need examples, because everything otherwise remains theoretical. IPR, technical framework, business development. We want to make examples. And for this reason, we identified the 6 examples that are the 6 pilots. Here you see the list of names. I will go through them with a quick description. And these 6 pilots are examples of what can be done, or examples of what cannot work, because they are pilots, so we are expecting to have results that maybe also say this line, this road is too difficult to be followed. They are on their way. We had the first conference of European Space in Venice last year, because Ca' Foscari is our partner leading the market analysis for the 6 pilots, the 6 areas addressed by the pilots. We will have the second international conference this year in Tallinn, hosted by the Ministry of Culture. So we move north, east, and in an institution to see another point of view of the problems that we are addressing. And we are more or less midway. We are in the middle of the project. We went through the review. You know that the European projects are annually reviewed by experts nominated by the European Commission. The review was very positive, so we obtained go ahead, and now we are midway of our work. So I have not the definitive results to show you, but already some lessons that we are learning. Next, please. So, as I said, there are different areas, the 3 areas that I told you: the reuse, the innovation, and the piloting. And these are articulated around work packages, areas of work, practical work that we do in the project. The first line is to create prototypes that come out from the pilots. The second line is to create a platform of recommendations, guidelines, instruments, tools for open access and IPR issues. They are combined because they are 2 faces of the same coin. We have to be as much open as possible, but we cannot forget that there are still businesses that are based on the exploitation of rights. So if we pretend to go either only on the exploitation of rights, or vice versa, only on the side of the opening, we will fail. We have to find a good balance, a good combination of the 2 aspects. Then we have user testing, refining, involvement of users. For us, it's very important to go beyond the 29 partners, and in this sense, these workshops, we are running other workshops all over Europe, are very important. Then we have this program of hackathons. We already had the first hackathon in May about interactive TV, and you will see that this is an area of one of the pilots. The second hackathon will take place next month in Prague, and it is about dance content. And then there will be other hackathons in the 2016, in particular one about photography, and you have here the coordinator of the hackathon of photography, who is our colleague from KU11. I think it is also time to know each other, to understand who we are, because we are supposed to work together all the day. We have 6 business development workshops that are associated with the 6 themes of the pilots and the 6 hackathons. So there is this repeating 6 number, like devil approach to creation. And then after the pilot, after the hackathons, after the business development workshop, we will have a distilled best results that will be subject of an incubation and help to go to market. So we hope that by the end of the project, in 2017, we will have some real success story to tell. Next, please. The 6 pilots are these. One is on interactive TV, we call it Europeana TV because it is using mostly the content that is already available through Europeana. Is everybody aware about what is Europeana? Somebody do not know Europeana. Okay, so I'll tell you a few words about Europeana. Europeana is a flagship initiative of the European Commission. So there is a direct involvement of the European Commission in supporting Europeana. But it is not a project run by the European Commission. There is a foundation with its premises in the Netherlands that is running Europeana. The concept of Europeana is old because when Chirac was still the president of the French Republic, he wrote to the Commission saying we need to have an alternative to Google that is representing the cultural heritage of Europe. And this is the start of the idea of Europeana. So, and it was 2005, so it is a long time ago, 10 years ago. Then from this original idea, it developed a system, a portal that is now online and everybody can access it, which is a portal that gives access to cultural heritage as a huge museum made of millions, tens of millions of objects. But consider the tens of millions of objects. If we want to have a museum of the cultural heritage of Europe, it's just a drop. So there is a strong investment of member states, cultural institutions, universities to continue to digitize because to move the cultural heritage of Europe online in the digital world requires a lot of investment in terms of digitization. And there is at the same time a huge organization that is around getting indexes of these digitized items to put these indexes into Europeana. So this process is still ongoing. However, in the meantime, Europeana was conceived as the portal to the European cultural heritage at the beginning, is little by little trying to find its own vocation, because just a portal to millions of objects without any narratives, we found out that is not very profitable. We need the connections between cultural objects. The museum is not only the storage of cultural objects, one on the side of the other with a label. This is not a museum, that is a warehouse. A museum are stories, exhibitions, narratives around some portion of the cultural heritage. The storage is for the researchers. Then the users, the normal users who visit the museums need the stories. And in this sense, Europeana is now evolving, and around Europeana, all the projects that are connected with Europeana to tell stories. One of them, just for the reference for those who are from Pisa, is the story about the early photography that was told through the All Our Yesterdays exhibition that took place last year here in Pisa for the premiere in Palazzo Lanfranchi. And this exhibition told the story of the early photography through 120 pictures taken out of 430,000 digitized images. So out of 430,000 we selected the 120 and we told the stories around these 120. Stories of children, of disasters, of the war, of the life in the streets, and these were narratives around the 120 pictures. So this was a part of the project coordinated by Fred, and this exhibition, where we reproduced in a high size the digital representation of the original pictures taken at the beginning of the 1900 was a very emotional experience, because we had the quality of the modern production, but with the images of the past that contains in their own analog support all this information, but in the analog world it's not possible to explore it as it is now possible to do thanks to the digital technologies. Because the analog format is like this, so it does not give us emotions. Through the high resolution digitization, we can enlarge with millions of pixels the analog picture, and we can reproduce in high resolution. So as it is, as it was a real experience, the picture on the street of Paris at the beginning of 1900, or a boxing child in the UK with the face full of blood. So something that is really astonishing us, because it seems that we were there. Well, this is the example of what is creativity in our mind. So these are the 6 pilots: interactive TV, photography, dance, games, open and hybrid publishing, which means using open content that is available on the internet to produce new books that are open by themselves. So the number 5 is totally open. There is nothing about protection of rights. Instead, for example, both in European TV and photography, there is a lot about rights. Dance and games are in between, and museums. Museums is the pilot that is coordinated by Fondazione Sistema Toscana, and it has both the use of the apps to support, trying to use the apps to support visits of the museums, as well as the use of digital technologies to create learning material from the exhibitions to be shared with the schools. So 2 declinations of the use of the technologies in the museums. Next. I think that I will go quickly through the pilots, because you have full information online on the website, and you have a link to the website in the booklet. Next, please. Europeana TV, as I told you, has already run the first hackathon, and we are about to look at the results of the business and development workshop, so we are expecting results. Next, please. Photography will run a pre-hackathon in beginning of December in Leuven, and a hackathon for reuse of photographic heritage in March next year, again in Belgium. And the idea is to use these pictures for museum applications, storytelling, augmented reality experiences. Dance is the hackathon that I mentioned you in Prague next month, and in dance, next please, there are 2 tracks. One is to create an environment for professionals of dance, to be able to access digital representation of dance for their professional work, and the other is an environment to get involved the users in looking at dance as a component of our cultural heritage that is often not very much used. Next, please. Games it looks the most trivial, okay? We use content to do games, but it is not. Because in games producers are used to use synthetic environments. And so the use of cultural heritage environment is not so trivial from the narratives that are beyond the games. So we are still studying it. Next. And the open hybrid publishing is a very interesting pilot. I invite you to go on the internet, because there is the link to the first open book that is called Photo Mediation open book. It is a coffee table book, they use to say, like a book that you go through while you take a coffee, and it is there are a lot of stories about how the photography as a technique is a mediation between the person and the physical world. So it is a philosophical reflection on the mediation of photography through examples that are taken from open content available on the internet, among which European, but not only. Next. And this is the link to the photo mediation open book. Next. And this is the museum pilot. We want to create ready-to-use solutions. As I told you, there are 2 tracks. Support to visits and support to exploitation of the content for educational purposes. And then, next, we have demonstrators of what can be done with digital content in the educational environment. Here we have 4 demonstrators. Cavafy is a writer, a Greek writer. For those who read Caro Figlio, one of the poems of Cavafy is in one book of Caro Figlio. It is a beautiful poem. So there is a certain knowledge of Cavafy. Cavafy is a 1900 writer who wrote poems about the spirit of the ancient Greek with the modern feeling of life. So it is also a nice combination of culture and the future. And the Onassis Cultural Foundation has all the manuscripts of Cavafy, and they are developing a demonstrator based on these manuscripts. And then the Irish poetry and folk tales are taken from books from the public libraries in Ireland, because the local the agency, the Irish Agency for Public Libraries, is a partner and has access to all the content of these folk stories in the Irish books. Then there is a photographic investigation of works of art, and this is about very high resolution images of Van Eyck paintings in Belgium, and an archaeological built and 3D heritage that is using the 3D techniques to reconstruct 3D environments from 2D pictures. So there are, this is run in Cyprus. There are different, again, we are trying to provide examples of the millions of possible applications. This will be demonstrated in Athens next year, January 2016. Well, so we think that we can enter into this virtuous cycle, next please, and we think that there are several beneficiaries, certainly the creative SMEs, but also larger industries in the creative industry, and we wanted to target large industries because the SMEs need to get in contact with the large industries. We have RBB, that is the national television company in Germany, and we think that this is for the interactive TV a good partnership, for example. Individual creators and artists, so even individual, the educational sector, cultural institutions, and other social and economic activities. Next, please. In summary, European Space is an open environment, a large digital cultural heritage community, and innovative network of allied partners. These are the next events. The Hacking the Dancing Body, the hackathon about dance in Prague, Hack the Book Festival, the demonstration of the educational demonstrators in Athens, and the second international conference in Tallinn. And they are all open initiatives, we do not charge any fee, so they are for free. Next. Next. A last word about Digital Meets Culture. Digital Meets Culture is a magazine that tells a story about the encounter of digital technologies and cultural heritage. And it hosts blogs of several European projects, among which European states. It is counting around 20,000 visits per month, from 19 to 20,000, depending if it is the weekend, if there is a vacation, if there is an event, because you know the number of visits changes from day to day. But what it is interesting to say is that there is a need to know what is happening in this environment, in this gray area that is made of IT specialists, cultural heritage institutions, museums, curators, and creative young individuals, young creators. So what we think is that we need a space for dialoguing, for telling stories, to tell what we are doing, and to developing a common language. Because often the problem when we have different communities meeting is that each community speaks its own language. And this means that they don't understand each other. Even if there is a comprehension of the wording, there is not a comprehension of the meaning. And from the very technical experiences, metadata has a different meaning for a museum curator, an IT specialist, and a creative person. Maybe for the creative person could also not have a strong meaning. For museum curators is very important, and it is the information associated with the object. So it contextualizes the object in the collection, in the cultural collection. For the IT specialist is a sequence of bits. So the meaning is totally different, but this is a key element in the digital world, because without the metadata, that is a combination of the three aspects. Just an idea of what could be beyond the data for the creative person, the description of the digital object for the museum creator, and the sequence of interpretable bits. In the digital world, this is fundamental, because it is through the metadata that we can make a search, we can find information, and we can reuse information. So connecting these communities is a very important aspect, and we think that the Digital Meets Culture is contributing in this sense.